I not only do I not believe in Jesus Christ, but if Jesus Christ was real, I would have to fundamentally reject Jesus Christ. So yeah, what about that God dude? Like, is there any evidence that God exists? The
Who asked that?
LPP was talking about intelligent design, but I don't know of any evidence that suggests there's a God.
Yeah. Hey, Wizard, I wonder, how did you determine that all evidence is not evidence of God? How'd you do that?
So, like, one example.
No, I'm asking you. Your question presupposes that you've already determined that all evidence isn't evidence of God. I'm wondering how you did that. Are you just
Evidence.
asserting that all evidence isn't evidence of God? I'm assuming that because you're asking for evidence, that it is your position that beliefs held without evidence are irrational. So what is your rational line of reasoning?
I'm just unaware of any evidence that suggests God exists.
Yeah, well, you're just repeating the same thing you said. I'm asking how
I'm
you
confused by your
determined.
question. It's like a double negative.
No,
I
it's
mean, I
not.
think there's
How
evidence
did
that.
you? Yeah.
Well, so let me say this. So, like, let's take Zeus, for example. They used to believe
We're
that
not.
lightning.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. So let me
But it's
repeat
relevant.
Let me repeat my question. So my question to you was, how did you determine that all evidence, including the tree in front of your house, isn't evidence of God?
It's
How'd you do
not
that?
evidence of God. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think
that
there's.
you said that. That's your claim. You've made the claim 3 times, and you also
So
yeah. So
I
how'd you
see a
figure that
tree.
out?
I see a tree, and I see an explanation of evolution that life became more complex.
No, you see a
But
tree and you presuppose
Would you
evolution,
please stop interrupting so that he can answer the question that you've asked him?
yeah, but it doesn't follow from that God is not singularly in control of the system that you're observing, right? So again, how did you determine that a tree is not evidence of God?
so if you'll allow me, I promise it's relative or it relates. So like with the example of Zeus, there's specific attributes of Zeus, like he creates lightning, and and then when science determines, oh, there's other causes of lightning, so then we can say, well, therefore Zeus doesn't exist because he creates lightning. So then when we create specific attributes of God, for example, he created everything 6,000 years ago, we can look at the evidence and we can determine that that specific God, all right, so like any God, like we can pick Shiva, we can pick Odin, and we can say, okay, here's these specific attributes, like Superman is affected by kryptonite. If we can prove that kryptonite is bogus, then like Superman doesn't exist, or so like we have these specific attributes of God, that he's a good loving designer and that he created everything, and he did Noah's flood, and we can disprove these one by one.
Yeah, so
We can
you're just
disprove
repeating the same thing over and over again. Okay, so first of all, when you say Zeus, that's a category error, because we're not talking about like a diamond asteroid. Okay, we're talking about a worldview, a complete concept of reality, a new web of beliefs, something that's totally different. That's almost like if you were to compare an Android with an Apple. Okay, 2 separate operating systems. So it's a category error if you want to say Zeus or a colony of pixies or a unicorn, all of those cliches, that's fine. But that's a category error, okay? Next, you went on to say that we can determine all of the evidence. Again, that's the claim that you've made now 4 times. I'm asking you specifically, how did you determine all of the evidence is not evidence of God, okay? Now, whether or not someone made a claim that Zeus threw down lightning, and now we know how lightning works, that still doesn't answer the question, okay? It's like, look, we know more about lightning. That's fine. So how did you determine, again, that all of these things are not evidence of God?
So
Do you want someone else to
2017
go at it, Wade, or you want to keep trying?
No. I would love to address this. Please.
Okay,
So
have
the
fun.
question is addressed to me. Yeah, so I grew up Mormon, and I believed 100% that Mormonism was true. In 2017, like from 2017 to for over a year, I studied theology every day for hours, and I wanted to know with absolute certainty, like which God was true, and like I just mean like because I genuinely had a concern. So you were asking like how do I determine, right?
Yeah, it was you said that, essentially, okay, that beliefs held without evidence are irrational.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
what is your rational evidence that there is
yeah,
no God?
yeah.
What is that?
So I was searching for the truth. I was searching for God, right? I wanted to know. I had absolute, genuine concern for the salvation of my soul, and I was praying. I was reading the scriptures, and one thing that a lot of religions have in common is they say, "Hey, if you're not sure, if you want to know, ask God." And I asked God, and I pleaded with God, and I prayed, and I begged on my knees, and I cried, and I wanted to know with absolute certainty. And my anecdotal experience is my own. But if there has ever been a scientific experiment that has ever been repeated more and more, it's the billions and billions of people on this earth who are pleading with God to know what's the correct answer. What is the correct, which God, okay? Like what commandments? What do you want me to do in this life?
You just refuted yourself with that one.
And the answers, okay, the answers from their prayer are Shiva and Buddha and Mormon Jesus and like all these different gods. Like, how am I supposed to know?
Yeah, so your own. It does not follow that you rubbed a lamp and a genie didn't pop out. It does not follow from that there is no God. Okay, and then when you want to appeal to a consensus, you've just refuted yourself because by far the greater population of this globe does believe in a God of some sort. So it does not follow that because people are confused on certain attributes of God or which God. It does not follow from that there is no God. But the question again that I've posed to you now many times is how did you determine that all of the physical evidence that you're acquainted with is not evidence of God? That was the question, and I haven't received anything other than just emotional responses, which is fine.
No,
but those aren't very
I can give you an
convincing,
answer.
and you
It's
haven't
skepticism.
you haven't met your own standard, which is evidence.
It's
So you failed by your own
skepticism.
standard.
I
Go
see
ahead.
something that others interpret as evidence, and I say, well, I'm skeptical. I don't know if it's this God or that God, or maybe it's just natural. And my question for you is how do you determine which God is totally legit and which gods are absolute buffoonery, like Zeus? How do
Yeah,
you
so
know?
appealing to somebody else's arbitrary interpretation of the evidence, it does not follow from that there is no God. Okay, and again, I've asked you, and I'll be happy to answer your question. You asked me how I determined it. I'll say it's because of revelation. God revealed it to be the case. Okay, you don't have to accept that. It's not my job to convince you. Okay, but that is my answer.
Yeah,
So
I haven't received that, right?
again, the question that I posed to you was how did you determine by your own standard, which is evidence, how did you determine that all of these things are not evidence of God?
I determined it because I saw an inconsistency in individuals' revelations. We see, like I said, billions of people around the
I've
world.
already addressed that.
Hey, Sam, I have a question.
Well, I'm just like, that's my answer to the question. That's how
Okay, well, that's not rational. It doesn't follow that because a lot of people are confused that
I
there
think
is
we've
no
gone
God.
in this circle a lot of times already. Can we? Does anyone else have something to talk about? Or
Yeah.
All right, so we look at all my jokes aside, and again, for anybody who's like suffering from atheist hyperliteralist disorder in the side chat, I was being facetious. I wasn't actually being serious. I wasn't actually insulting anybody, so don't get all worked up. And I don't think there needs to be, atheist on atheist dumpster fire action, even though it would be interesting. I'm not encouraging that, but if it happens, it would be funny, and I would watch it. But go ahead. All right, guys, go ahead and go back to start.
Hey, I just want to jump in because I just want to wrap up and kind of dip out here pretty soon, and I guess give anybody an opportunity to, if they wanted to have a question or something. I had a few comments that I've been wanting to bring up, but yeah. So I guess let's see. I don't know. One interesting thought. We were talking about computer code and DNA code, but we don't have an example of a computer code self-replicating, right? I don't know that we do, at least not in a similar way that DNA works. But I was having that conversation. Who was it? We were talking about God and evidence. My main point, my main thought is, or I guess the one thing that led me to atheism. All right, so we have a bunch of different people with different revelations, but I don't know how I can, with absolute certainty, know that revelation was that God, or was that some mischievous deity that I don't know of. I can't really prove that, right? There's no way of knowing with absolute certainty that and that was one of my issues. That's why I started to search for God, is because I would pray and I'd have a good feeling, but I wasn't sure if was that just my own psychology, was that some other kind of mischievous deity, or was it God? And there was no way that I could confirm that. And I mean, that started my transition, but I now think that, there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of lacking evidence, and there's a lot of evidence that disproves God, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you used I guess we'll say a rational line of reasoning. You saw the contradictions in the Mormon position. The Mormons.
We can all agree that Mormonism is garbage, right?
Yeah. Well, but I mean, the point is, you can look for a contradiction. You could say, well, the Book of Mormon requires the Bible to be a foundational book, but there's contradictions, so one of them is necessarily false. If the Bible is false, then the Book of Mormon would also be false, because the Bible is a primary book, so it can't be the Bible. So you can eliminate the Book of Mormon that way. Right? And then when you're talking about God, you would say, well, if there is to be an all-creator God, right, then it would follow from that, based on these certain attributes of God, that, there would be at least some sort of evidence. That means other lesser gods, they should meet, there should be a bar, a certain level of criteria that some of these other professing religions would have to meet. And there's not many of them. There's 3. There's Hinduism, I think, is a computer, right? You've got the Muslims, you've got the Jewish religion, and then you have Christianity. So those are the 4, right? Is there any other serious contenders?
Scientology.
Science. You think science is a faith position?
Well,
or it's not.
But I want to dip out here real quick. So I don't want to go and this could be a whole other conversation. I did want to
Well,
one thing
you
that
asked a question, and I just wanted to give you an answer. But just
I wanna
really
say
quick, something else you said that somehow science disproved these things, but in reality, you see a system, and you learn how to, or you see something, and you learn how to explain it from a scientific perspective, but it doesn't follow from that God did not initiate that whole process, right? And I asked you how did you determine that it wasn't the case, that God didn't initiate that whole process? And you didn't meet your own
yeah.
standard of criteria. You're evidential.
So
Can I say
You
something real
appeal to
quick?
evidence, but you don't have an evidential line of
Okay,
reasoning for me.
let's let Wade respond because he's about
Go
to.
ahead.
yeah, I mean, this is an interesting conversation. I'd like to go more into depth. I don't really have the time right now. I did want to mention, so part of my transition away from Mormonism, that was 2017, and then the following year, I created a weekly blog that called Sacrilegious Sabbath. I'll throw this link in the side chat. So I've got like 50 or more articles about faith and the atonement, and I discuss all these different issues. But yeah, I've discussed and I've researched and I've thought a lot about God and how I really just don't believe in God
Yeah,
at
that's
all.
fine. But you don't have a rational argument. You've
Wait,
got a lot of
No,
links,
I
maybe.
do. I do. I just
You could even link Google, but I asked you for a rational argument, and you weren't able to present that. You weren't even able to meet your own criteria.
Hey, Wade, I was just
So
going to say, sorry.
Sorry. Well, I'm sorry. What was? I mean, I do have rational reasons. why
I
don't believe
believe
God, but
something
that's
to be the
whole
case
other
is not a
conversation.
rational argument, right? I believe the Earth is flat. I believe there's a colony of pixies on the moon.
Let's
Those
mark
aren't
a
rational
calendar.
things.
And we can have a whole other conversation about how I have rational thoughts as to why God doesn't exist. A specific God.
Thinking something doesn't necessarily make it the case, though.
Hey,
right?
dude, it's been interesting.
Wade, before you go.
Yeah, any
Okay.
other final words?
All it is every religion, every single religion except one, tells you that you must do something, you must do these things, you must be a good person. It's selfish. But it's Christianity that says, it's a Bible-believing Christianity that says Christ died for you, even though that you're a sinner, even though that you deserve to go to hell. Christ died for you in your place. So, and all you have to do is believe on the name of Jesus Christ, and you shall
This
be
all
saved.
sounds great. So here's my website, Sacrilegious Sabbath, and I talk about respecting beliefs. I talked about faith. I talk about how the atonement of Jesus Christ is actually immoral. I talk about a lot of things. Creation. I talk about circumcision, the watchmaker. I would suggest you take a look at my website. I don't know if you're interested, but I'm not really interested in like what you're talking about. I not only do I not believe in Jesus Christ, but if Jesus Christ was real, I would have to fundamentally reject Jesus Christ because of the atonement. And
Wait, you said it's not moral? The atonement's not moral?
yes, absolutely.
Do you have a sufficient moral standard to substantiate your accusation without borrowing from the biblical worldview?
Dude,
Or is it just your opinion? You're like, I have this opinion. Something's
No.
not moral. Where'd you get that morality from? Huh?
Yeah,
Whoops.
that's a
Do you have to
whole-
borrow that from the biblical worldview?
Ooh, you almost got me there, dude. But I've studied a lot. I've studied morality. I've studied
Well,
theology.
then answer my
I've studied
question. It's
God,
pretty
I've studied-
simple. What standard
How
of
is it
morality
immoral?
are you using to substantiate your accusation that anything can be immoral?
So-
Where'd you get that?
Where did the hinges
Let's
get?
go into that in another time. But you know
Okay.
what?
I expect you to
Evolution-
have an answer then.
So if I wanted to say I'm a father and I have some children and I want to give my children an inheritance or heaven, okay, and I have a set of rules that I don't tell them, I'm going to kill one of my
You've
sons.
already misrepresented the biblical worldview.
Well,
Sam, hang on. Just be quiet. Let's let Wade finish his point.
Yeah.
Nobody
I don't
interrupt.
know. I'm really interested in this discussion.